Sew along with me to make this classic Bearclaw quilt in grunge, one block at a time. This is a Joyful Threads, all pre-cut, ready to sew block of the month program that's open now. Easily sign up on our website to get started and pick up your first block today, or have it delivered right to your doorstep. I hope you'll join me in making the first block. Thanks for watching. To start, we're going to take 4 of our purple and 4 of our background 5-inch squares, and we're going to set everything else to the side for now. Start by laying them out and pairing one of your background fabric with one of your focal fabric, right sides together. I like to put the lighter one on top because it's easier for me to see. Do that with all 4 squares. We are making hasbro triangles 4 at a time with this method. What that involves is taking to the sewing machine and sewing 1/4 of an inch all the way around the outside of each of these squares. Now, with all 4 sets of your squares that you just put right sides together, take it to the sewing machine and we're going to sew 1/4 of an inch all the way around. The easiest way I found to do this is chain piecing. So starting at the top of your first square, let's sew our first line. Sew a little bit off the edge of the fabric before grabbing your next piece and lining it up, and just put it right underneath before the needle and sew to the end of it. Do this with all 4 of your squares. When you reach the end of your 4th square, I like to leave my needle down and not cut that one, and we're going to clip the rest of our squares and cut them off. And then start on the next side. When you get to the 3rd side, do the same thing and go down here. Repeat that for all squares. And finally, our 4th side to finish it up. We're back at the cutting table, and what we're going to do is cut these in half diagonally both ways. So make sure that you have a ruler that is long enough to go from point to point of these squares. And all you're going to do is line it up right where your seams intersect from both corners, just like so. And you're going to cut it in half. Now, you can turn your ruler and line it this way and cut like that, but I have this nice spinning mat, so I'm going to spin it so I don't mess up my block. Line it up from the next 2 corners and cut it in half. That's going to give us 4 from one block, so 16 total once we do the rest of our hasbro triangles. So let me finish this and we'll meet you at the ironing board. In quilting, the rule of thumb is to always press to the dark side. Press the darkest fabric over the seam. So from the back, you'll see the more of the white than you will of the dark. The reason being, especially with white fabrics like this, if you press it to the white, sometimes through the light, you see that there, you can see the white seam poking through it. It makes it look darker. But if you push it to the dark covers it up. We're going to take each little piece like this, and I'm going to do it the dark side up, and I'm going to set the seam. That just makes the thread melt into the fabric and makes it all one piece. You don't need to do that for long. Then you're going to open it up. And I'm not putting any pressure here, I'm just opening it and sliding on top. Once I have the iron in place, then you can put a bit of pressure. And you're gonna get a nice flat seam. You do that with all 16 hasbro triangles. If you want, you can hit this with some Best Press or just some plain old distilled water. All right, now we go back to the cutting mat. Because we want our block to finish nice and square, we're going to trim all 16 of our hasbro triangles to a perfect 2 3/4 inch. There's a 45-degree angle line on most rulers, and you put that directly in the seam of the block. So you know you have equal amounts white and purple on your hasbro triangle. Now this square is 3 1/8 inches, so we have plenty to trim off. We don't have to worry about being short. Put it within 2 3/4 on this side, so I'm cutting quite a bit off. And I'm going to trim this side first. And then I'm going to flip my square 180. Now I have a nice clean edge to perfectly line up on the 2 3/4 inch mark on my ruler. still keeping the 45-degree angle line in the middle of the seam, which it should be since we already trimmed the other side, just like so. And we're going to do our final trim. Alright, and there's our little block ready to be sewn into the bear claw. If you have trouble finding that mark over and over again, an easy way to do it is take painter's tape or washi tape or anything you have and line it up on the outside of the 2 3/4 inch mark on your ruler. So that way you don't have to find that line over and over again. I don't like to cover the whole thing up with a piece of tape because then you can't see where your block is underneath. So if you leave little staggered openings, it's easier to find. And then you can put that on the block. You see I'm perfectly within 2 3/4. So we just trim here and here. Turn it to the other side for our second trim. And then I can put it directly on the edge of that tape. I have my 45. And there we go. Repeat with the rest of the half square triangles. Hard part's over. Now we're going to lay out the block. You're going to bring back your focal squares that are left over and your background corner squares. The best part about the bear claw is that's it. You do that 4 times because the paws don't change layout, they just change which way they're turned in the block. So lay out your corner square first, I find it's easiest. Take your half square triangles and point the focal fabrics towards each other and lay them down. And do the same with the outside ones, point the fabric towards each other and then put your 5-inch square right there. And we're going to sew the 2 on the side together and the 3 on the top together in a row, and I'll show you which way to iron them. Do that for all 4 blocks. I would suggest pinning or clipping these on the side that you're going to be sewing on so we don't get confused when we take it to the sewing machine. Line the tips up on the edges both ways and sew 1/4 of an inch down the side. And same thing here, I'm going to chain piece, so I'm going to go ahead and put this one on right after that without cutting thread. I have to cut that to get to this one. Now we're going to go iron. Now that you have your set sewn for the tops and the sides of each block, let's see which way we're going to iron them. Every one is ironed away from the corner block. So you're going to take this one, don't forget to set your seam, and then iron it down or away from the corner block, the way it's going to be laid out. Just like so. Same thing with this. All of these, we're going to set them, and then we're going to iron it away from the corner block. I'm going to set this one, iron it away, and then I'm going to just press the whole thing like so. And that way it's kind of pressed towards the dark side because once you turn it over it'll look like this. So a lot of it's on the darker purple, especially the corner squares so we don't see our seam. Take your focal fabric and throw it into the mix. We're going to sew the short side onto it first. And we're just going to pin that and take it to the sewing machine and be right back to iron it. Sew 1/4 inch down the side for the side piece. Making sure that you take this little corner and get it right on the edge and then hold it in place. Sometimes I'll use scissors or stiletto once it gets closer to hold it. Now we have that piece sewn on. We're going to set the seam, and then for this first ironing, we're going to press towards the half square triangles. It's a little bulky, so just take your time with it and let it sit for a second. And it should look like that. I like to iron from the front too, because see how bubbly it is? I want to get it from both sides. Line it back up, check that it still looks right. It does. Now we're going to take the top piece and fold it over. Now, because we ironed towards the half square triangles there and this towards the focal fabric there away from our corner square. Our seams right here now nest. So this one goes to the right and this one goes to the left. So we're going to push those against each other so that they lock, and you'll feel that there's no opening between them. And we're going to pin or clip. Sometimes pin hold this in place better. And you're going to pin a 1/4 inch in because that's where your stitching line is going to be, just like so. Now, if you want everything to line up perfectly, or if your block is having trouble lining up, I recommend pinning the beginning and the end and that seam of your block so you know where everything is going to end up, and just make it fit. Alright, let's go sew that. Same thing with the long side, just be careful that you don't sew over your pins. To avoid this, I stitch a little bit onto it right before the pin and take it out. And then go to the next step. And see, I usually have to lift my presser foot to get it over the pin, but I don't want to take it out yet because it'll shift if I do. So sew just a stitch before it, take it out, and then sew to the end. I did just sew over that pin, but that's probably not best to do. There's our block. Let's go iron it. Once that's sewn, we're going to iron it. Again, set your seam, make sure everything lays nice and flat. You're going to iron the big long one towards your big square. So we're going to go inwards. And again, I'm going to iron it from the front too, because I think it just makes it nice and smooth. And you can kind of manipulate the fabric. So if I think this doesn't look square over here, I can come over here with my iron and make it square. We'll do that 4 times. We have all 4 bear paws finished. Now we're going to lay it out into our final block. You're going to put them in each corner pointing outwards. Then we're going to get our cornerstone that we set aside from before and our 4 background sashing strips from before, and put 1 each in between each bear paw. And the way to sew this is in rows. So this sashing strip with the 2 paws is a row, these with the cornerstone is a long row, and the bottom 2 in the sashing is a row. So you're going to sew all 3 together, and then we're going to iron. If you're having trouble with your blocks fitting to your sashing and being the same size, I recommend taking and pinning the end and beginning of the strip to the end and beginning of the block. So that way you can just make them fit, because you have all this room in here to gather or shrink depending on what you need to do. We have our 3 rows together, and so our seams here in the center will nest. You're going to iron the middle section in towards the cornerstone, just like so. And then the other 2 pieces you're going to iron towards the bear paws. So let's set our seams like always. I'm going to do those at the same time. And then press them to either side. It's a little bulky there, so we'll let the iron sit on that seam a little bit longer. Press it into submission. And then we'll iron it from the front too. Alright. And now this one, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to press towards the bear paws. We're going to lay the bear paw out like it's going to look when it's finally sewn together. Put this in the middle. You're going to flip this over to this side, and you're going to nest these seams. You want it to look like a perfect checkerboard if you pull it back like that. You do not want any gaps where you can see white. We're going to push it right together, and you're going to pin both of these seams and the beginning and end of your block Sew that, flip it out, sew the top on the same exact way, nesting your seams, and then we'll come back to the ironing board for one final press. Okay, we have the whole thing pinned, so we're going to go ahead and stitch our 4th inch. We're going to add on the other side of our bear claw, and that's the final seam. Step, we have one more thing to iron. So this final seam, you're going to press it into the bear claws. And we're going to press it from the back and the front, and when we turn it over, we'll give it a good press all the way around and iron it from the front. And get the hard knots, press them down. Okay, with that, you have finished your Bearclaw block. Isn't it beautiful? It's so pretty. Now we're gonna do that 11 more times to make a quilt. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please visit us at A Joyful Thread to start this block of the month, or go to ajoyfulthread.com and sign up now. Thanks for watching and happy sewing.